Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And since Labor Day was this week, for the rest of the week, I'm doing movies that are workplace comedies. And this one was also two viewers' requests, and it is for the 2005 film Waiting. Here is your trivia question for today. In the film, Rodimus creates a game where the male staff shows off their genitalia to each other as a form of hazing. Name at least one of the four techniques mentioned by him. So, in the film Waiting, everything takes place at a restaurant called Shenanigans. Our main character, Dean, is currently working there, but is trying to figure out what he really wants to do with the rest of his life. Now, along with Dean, we meet some very interesting characters that are the wait staff, the bartenders, everyone working in the kitchen, and the remaining staff members. So we watch as all of them take care of customers throughout a regular shift, some of them being really good and a lot of them being really bad. Now, due to how the customers treat the waitstaff, we also soon find out how the food gets prepared in those particular situations. And of course, we also witness the lengths this group will go to keep each other entertained. But the most important question for this film is, after the end of his first shift, will Mitch, the new guy, decide that this is the right fit for him, or will he run away from Shenanigans forever? This movie was written and directed by Rob McKittrick. In fact, he worked at a chain restaurant for 3 years, and while there, he actually came up with the idea for this film. He even wrote some of the ideas down on cocktail napkins during that time. The cast for this film actually was comprised of a lot of actors who would eventually become very well known. Some of the actors that appeared in the film that had already started their careers a bit were Louise Guzman, Chi McBride, and David Koechner. And then, of course, there were a few actors that became extremely well known in the early 2000s, with Justin Long, Ryan Reynolds, and Anna Faris. Dane Cook was a comedian who at the time was receiving quite a bit of popularity. Now, his role in the film, there were actually no lines written, so everything that he said was completely improvised. Rob Benedict played the character of Calvin, and you probably know him pretty well, though, from the television series Supernatural as the character of Chuck and, well, someone else. I won't reveal that in case you haven't watched the series. In the original script, there were actually two characters called Calvin and Brian. Calvin had an issue with peeing in public restrooms, and Brian had an issue with not being able to get with women. Eventually, they combined both of those together to just create the character of Calvin. You may or may not recognize the actress Alana Ubach, but she played the character of Naomi in the film. However, though, you might recognize her from something more recent, as she now appears on the television series Ted as the character of Susan Bennett. This completely surprised me as I had no idea this was the same actress. One other random piece of trivia related to Ubach in this film is when the character of Naomi decides to participate in the genitalia showing game, that's not actually Ubach. What's funny is, they did ask her if she'd be willing to, but she refused, so they brought in a local stripper. However, though, there is of course a big fake bush covering almost the entire area. When Ubach found out about that, she then said, "Oh, I totally would have been willing to do that." Another face you might recognize is John Francis Daly as Mitch, but you might know him better from the television series Bones as Sweets. So during the time that Andy Milonakis was living his 15 minutes of fame, he did play Nick in this film. Jordan Ladd plays the character of Danielle the bartender. There's a possibility that this role at one point might have been larger, as at one time, Paris Hilton and Molly Sims were also both up for that role. One actress that I believe is very recognizable is Wendy Malick, and she has a brief cameo in the film as Monty's mother during a flashback. The set for the Shenanigans restaurant was actually a converted Bennigan's. This movie was entirely filmed in Louisiana. There was also a straight to DVD sequel for this film called Still Waiting. So when it comes to the film Waiting, I do find this movie very funny. And having worked in the service industry, there are a lot of things that I can relate to, and some things I wish I could have even done, but a lot of things that are just plain gross. So probably my biggest issue with this movie is the characters. I honestly don't think there's a character that's truly likable, especially the character of Monty. I really think the only way that people enjoy this character is because he's played by Ryan Reynolds. Otherwise, I don't think there's anything redeemable about him. So I'm going to give this movie a 3 out of 5. If you did enjoy waiting, other films I recommend checking out are The Slam and Salmon, Employee of the Month, Adventureland, and Office Space. And now it's time for the answer to the trivia question for today. In the film, Rodimus creates a game where the male staff shows off their genitalia to each other as a form of hazing. Name at least one of the 4 techniques mentioned by him. So, when explaining the rules of the game, Rodimus mentions at least 4 techniques: the log, the brain, the batwing, and the goat. Which, if you're at all curious, you can feel free to look up what those are specifically on your own time. By the way, did any of you eagle eyed viewers notice that on the wall of shenanigans, you can actually see some of the things represented? You can see a log, you can see a brain, a batwing, a goat, and then there's 3 others, which apparently means that there must at least be 3 moves called the Abraham Lincoln, the Eiffel Tower, and what I can only assume is the coin purse. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews. And if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.